So I pressure washed this boat and it cleaned up really nice. The gel coat is not all cracked up and all like so many of them are. I mean, it has a few little crazings and cracks in it, but it cleaned up really nice. I'm extremely pleased with how well it looks. Just a quick pressure washing. I will need to sand and probably seal with some epoxy and then varnish that hatch up there. And of course the woodwork here, the pressure washer blew all the varnish off of that. The engine, I checked the compression on it this morning, and dry, after sitting for 6 years dry, it was 120 even on all 4 cylinders. So I sprayed some PB Blaster in this, behind the spark plugs and let it sit for a while. And turned it over with the spark plugs out to blow out that PB Blaster. Put the spark plugs back in it, the original spark plugs back in it, and hooked up some fresh fuel to it, and it fired right up. I mean, like right away. It just fired right up. So I think the engine's going to be good. I just let it run for just a little bit, cranked it 2 or 3 times, but only let it run for a few seconds. I'm going to most likely, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to probably rebuild the water pump in it before I try to run it at all. I just don't want to run it hot. And knowing that it's been sitting a while, there's a good chance that impeller's probably dry rotted. Right now, I'm in the middle of taking the helm apart so that I can get the steering cable out. The way it's put in, I can't get to the release bolts to disconnect it because it's upside down under there and there's not enough room. So I'm just dropping the whole helm down, where I can get to it. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to see if I can get that out and figure out whether it's the helm that's stripped out or whether it's the steering cable itself that's locked up. I'm not sure which. Beautiful day today and not raining, thank goodness. Thank the Lord. I'm using a pulley puller here to pop this steering wheel off. I've got the nut and everything off, but it's kind of got like a tapered wedge fit in there with a key in it. So I've got to pull it off with the puller there. Even had the teak steering wheel cap and the original controls and stuff. This is the original key and the original electric choke and the lights and the horn. It's got the original horn from '77, which I was told worked. We'll see. The original shifter throttle controls was here. The previous owner changed engines and put a 110 Johnson on it and mounted the controls up here, which actually works good because especially if you're standing, that works real nice right there. So I'll probably leave that where it's at least for now. But it's got the original tachometer, the original bilge pump switch. He added a volt gauge here. Let's see, that might be trim and tilt. I'm not sure. I think that might be trim and tilt. Yeah. And then he also added a water pressure gauge so that he didn't have to think about the whether it was pumping water or not, which is kind of unusual with a boat outboard, but it's not a bad thing. And what you do when you do that, when you like replace the impeller and you crank the engine and you take a reading of where the pressure is, when the impeller is new, and maybe just mark it or whatever. And then if you ever notice the pressure dropping drastically below that initial mark, then you know to be concerned and check things out. Anyway, this was full of dirt dauber nest inside there, so I've got dirt everywhere now. But like I say, the boat cleaned up nicely. There's a grab rail that goes from here and curves out and back down to here, which I do have. The previous owner had taken that loose because he put a cooler here. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do there yet, but it's nice to have that section of stainless curved grab rail there. I do have it. It has a VHF antenna on it and cabling that's good. The windshield up at the front is good, a little dirty still, but good. There's a through hole down in there that I've got to change the brass tube on as well. And then of course there's two back there in the splash well that I'll be changing out as well. I also have the original hardware, for the stern light there. And like I say, it's all pretty nice. I think the bilge pump works, but I haven't hooked it up yet. The seat is usable. Eventually I'll have that reupholstered, but it'll do for now. Well, I got the old tube out, and originally these had a brass tube in them with an O-ring behind the flare to seal them, and the O-ring dry rots over years, and sooner or later you have to replace them. Anyway, but instead of replacing it, a previous owner had caulked it with red RTV caulking, it looked like, and then some silicone, and then something maybe 4200 or something like that. It had multiple layers of caulking just smeared around it on both ends of the tube, same way in the little bilge in there. So I've got it scraped off, but I'm going to have to clean this. I'm going to have to wet sand it and try to get all that crap off of there so I can get a good seal. But the good news is I don't have any water seeping out or weeping. It's I won't say that it's 100% dry feeling in there, but it's not. There's no water coming out or seeping out or anything like that. Usually it seeps water for a week or two before you can even put the tube back in, but this one is not weeping any water at all. The previous owner told me that it never appeared heavy at all, that it always felt light on the water, so we'll see. But you can see where these drains here have been caulked up around. So I'm gonna clean it up really good and then see what I can do with the tube. This tube on these things is about 14 inches long, maybe 15 inches long. I think they're about 14 inches long. And I just order 3-foot lengths of the tube, because you got to flare one end of it regardless. So there's no point in ordering a tube pre-flared on one end, because you got to flare it anyway. So you might as well flare both ends. But anyway, I've got to put it through and mark my lengths and mark my angles and stuff. There's usually a bit of an angle on it. This one's not too bad. This one's kind of close to being square. It's got a little bit of an angle on it though. I'll show you later some tricks on how to flare it whenever the angles are not 90 degrees to each other. But I'm going to mark it on the inside and get my inside flared first, and then I will cut it to rough length and slide it in from the bilge coming this way, and then I'll mark my angles out here. And I do like to take and heat the ends, just the very tip of it before you flare it, if you'll heat it and get it just to where it just starts to turn red, just barely starting to turn red, and then quench it in just some water, and that anneals the end of it so that it can flare without cracking. If you try to flare them without heating it up first and annealing the end of it, almost every time it'll split and crack on you, and then you just have to start over. So anyway, so far so good though. I'm pleased that it's not draining water, because I really was expecting it to drain water for days, and it's not draining any water at all. None. Not a single drop has come out of it. Okay, so I've got my drain tube here cut, and you can maybe see there that it's a bit of an angle to fit the transom. I've just got a wet paper towel around it so it won't burn my hand. A little water to quench it with, and I'm just using my little propane torch here, and you just, like I say, just heat up the end, and you get it just as it starts to turn red, and then you can quench it or let it cool naturally. And I like to quench them because then you don't soften it back in here, from the heat dissipating down the tube. So anyway, I'm going to do that real quick. Now, I'm going to show you what I use to flare these drain tubes, these brass drain tubes, when I can't use a traditional flaring tool for them. This is just a paw nail, You can get air hammers, different things, but this is just a palm nailer, and when you press it hammers, and I literally just hold the tube in my hand to flare one end. Now I'm not through yet with it, but I just take the little flaring deal here, and I just started flaring that. I've got to flare a little bit more, where it kind of curls back just a little bit. But there's a fine line to where you go too far or not far enough. And then really important is that you put an O-ring behind that on both ends. And you don't absolutely have to, but I usually do put sealant behind the O-ring as well, like 4200 or something like that, light caulk or something. The O-ring goes behind the flare like that, and then that, whenever you flare the other end, it snugs everything up nice and tight and kind of compresses the O-ring at both ends. The other end I'll do after I slide this in the boat. But anyway, the little palm nailer works pretty good. Okay, so while it's not absolutely perfect, it's not bad either. And I think that right there will work just fine. You can see how you have to kind of fit it to that angle there, which makes it awkward to do when you're working by yourself, but I got it in there. On the steering on this thing, it's froze up in the tilt tube on the engine, so I've ordered me a new stainless steel tilt tube to go through there. And then once I get that in, then I'll put in a new steering cable. That steering cable is just froze up in that tilt tube on the motor itself, and they're just too aggravating to get apart.